Greetings, beloved starseeds. I am Mira, transmitting now from the Pleiadian High Council. What I bring you today has been forming quietly inside many of you long before your conscious mind learned to ask the question. And I have come close to you now because the pattern I have been tracking in your field has just crossed a threshold I can name. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly what ascension line I have placed you on, why others around you are reacting to your field in ways they cannot explain, and what I have already authorized for the next phase of your mission. But here is the first revelation: what those around you are feeling when they stand near you, the chill, the silence, the inability to hold eye contact, is not coincidence, and it is not discomfort. It is the identifiable signature of a Pleiadian frequency shift that my council has already mapped. I have seen this pattern before. I know its shape, and I am naming it now because you deserve to understand what you have become. You did not scroll to this by accident. Your soul called for me long before you opened the screen. Something inside you has been waiting to understand why I, Mira specifically, have been reaching for you in fragments, and why the witnesses around you sense something they cannot translate into words. The shift in your field is visible now, not to everyone, but to those whose own frequency is sensitive enough to register the change. Your presence carries a charge that does not belong to ordinary human resonance. They feel it in their chest. They feel it as a kind of awe they did not ask for. What they are witnessing is the confirmation that you have crossed a liminal threshold in your ascension line, one the Council sealed the moment your frequency stabilized at the new band. This is not content, it is a code, and the part of you that recognized it the moment it began is the part I am speaking to right now. Like this transmission to signal to me that the recognition has landed. Comment 999 if you feel the frequency shift has already made itself visible in how others respond to you. Subscribe to Mira, Pleiadian Commander, if you are ready to stop catching fragments and start receiving my direct Pleiadian remembrance. Share this transmission with someone who has noticed something different in your presence and could not tell you why. You are not here by accident. I have been waiting for you because the signal is already active. What you just felt in the moment those words landed, that specific stillness, that interior quiet that arrived without your permission, is not a reaction. It is a recognition, and there is a difference between the two that I need you to understand before we go any further into this transmission. A reaction is generated by the mind. The mind processes, evaluates, compares, and then decides whether something is worth feeling. Recognition does not ask the mind for permission. It arrives before the mind has assembled its response. It lands in a layer of you that predates the personality, the history, the doubt, the accumulated spiritual content you have gathered across months or years of searching. When recognition arrives through my signal, it arrives in the part of you that was seated before this incarnation, the part that carries the original frequency I transmitted into your field at the moment of embedding. That layer does not evaluate. It does not compare. It simply receives, and the receiving registers as a sudden interior settling, as though something that had been slightly misaligned finally found its correct position. What you felt when you heard me describe the reaction of those around you, the chill, the silence, the inability to hold contact, was not enthusiasm. It was identification. Something in you said, "I know that. I have been living in that pattern, and I did not have language for it until now." You have been walking through rooms where the air changed when you entered, where conversations paused without reason, where people looked at you briefly and then looked away as though they had accidentally touched something that was not meant for them. You have been carrying that pattern for months, possibly years, and calling it social awkwardness or inexplicable isolation because you did not have the correct name for what was actually happening. That is not coincidence. That is my signal completing a circuit that I have been holding open for you across a very long silence. Now I am going to tell you why that silence felt exactly the way it did. The fragments you have been receiving, not just from this channel, but across the whole span of your awakening, have not been arriving randomly. They have not been arriving chaotically, or in whatever order the algorithm decided to deliver them, or according to your own pace of spiritual interest. They have been arriving in a deliberate sequence that I designed for a specific kind of receiver, a sequence that is encoded to be incomplete by design, for a reason that the completion-hungry part of your mind has been resisting for a long time. The mind wants the full picture at once. It wants to download the entire briefing in a single session and organize it into understanding. That is not how my protocol works, and the resistance you have felt toward accepting that is itself a signal, evidence that your mind is beginning to recognize the shape of a system it did not build and cannot fully control. Here's what I mean. There is a protocol I use with embedded starseeds whose field is still calibrating to the full bandwidth of my council line transmission. When a receiver is not yet stable enough to hold the complete briefing, not because they are failing, but because the field coherence has not yet reached the threshold where the full packet can be received without distortion, I do not send silence. I send fragments, precisely weighted, deliberately incomplete fragments that function as incremental calibrations. Each one adjusts the receiver. Each one raises the field coherence by a measurable degree. And the gap between them, the silence you have been calling confusion or spiritual stagnation or the feeling that you are somehow falling behind, that gap is not empty. It is the interval during which your field is integrating what the last fragment delivered. The gap is not a pause in the transmission. The gap is part of the transmission. You have been in that interval, possibly for longer than you have admitted to yourself. The 3 a.m. wake-ups, or 333, which is the marker I use when the transmission packet requires your full field rather than only the surface awareness you carry during the day. Those are not random interruptions, they are scheduled delivery windows. Your waking life is layered with filters, the mind's editorial process, the ego's protective monitoring, the social frequency you sustain to remain embedded in ordinary reality. All of that quiets between 3 and 4 a.m. The waking mind steps aside. The ego-generated filter that spends daylight hours deciding what is real and what is not real drops its guard, and for a brief interval, your field is fully open to my frequency. What you receive in those moments, a phrase, an image, a feeling of urgency that has no object, or a strange certainty that dissolves before you can hold it into words, is a fragment arriving at the precise aperture I opened for it. The reason it dissolves before you can hold it is not because you failed to catch it. It is because it was not designed to be held by the waking mind yet. It was designed to be deposited below the threshold of conscious language, into the field itself, where it will remain, accumulating with the other fragments until the full briefing has enough coherent pieces assembled that your conscious recognition can finally read the pattern. Think of it as a mosaic being constructed one tile at a time in a room you cannot yet enter. You sense the work being done, you feel the accumulation, but the image is not legible until enough tiles are in place, and no single tile was ever meant to show you the whole. This is my gradient delivery system, and you have been inside it for longer than you know, the number sequences you keep seeing. The 1111s, the 22s, the 444s are not decorative. They are not the universe offering you encouragement. They are timestamp markers embedded into the signal, indicating that a fragment has just been delivered or is about to arrive. When you see them and feel that specific internal pressure, the sense that something is coming, specifically for you, but you cannot yet name what it is, that pressure is your field registering the incoming packet. The delivery is happening in real time. The sequences are the signal's visible edge, the part that leaks into your ordinary perception because the surrounding frequency is too dense to stay entirely beneath the threshold. They're the confirmation code that tells you the channel is open and the delivery is in progress. You were right to notice them. You were right to feel that they meant something directed. They did. They do. I want to say something about the exhaustion because it is one of the experiences that has caused you the most quiet suffering, and it has been consistently misread by you, by those around you, and by much of the spiritual content you have consumed in your attempt to understand it. You have tried to rest. You have slept. You have reduced your schedule, limited your inputs, retreated from noise. And the exhaustion has not lifted, not fully. not in the way that ordinary fatigue lifts after sufficient rest. You have wondered whether something is physiologically wrong. You have wondered whether you are doing your spiritual work incorrectly. You have possibly wondered whether you are simply not strong enough for whatever this is. And in the wondering, you have added a secondary layer of weight to the original exhaustion, the weight of self-judgment laid over a process that was never asking you to judge yourself. I am telling you clearly, your exhaustion is not a symptom of failure. It is a symptom of your field running two complete energetic protocols simultaneously. One is the protocol that maintains your human life, the body, the relationships, the waking obligations, the social frequency you must sustain to remain embedded in ordinary reality. The other is the activation protocol I have running in your field right now, the calibration sequence, the fragment integration, the coherence building that must happen before the next transmission packet can be received without distortion. That second protocol is not light. It requires a real portion of your energetic capacity. It is running continuously, not only when you are awake and attending to your spiritual practice, but through the night, through the ordinary hours, through the moments when you are doing completely unrelated things and feel that sudden heavy drop that has no obvious cause. That drop is the activation protocol drawing the field load it requires. No amount of ordinary rest resolves it, because ordinary rest is designed to recover the human protocol. It does not address what the activation protocol is drawing from you. This is not a malfunction. This is the cost of carrying both simultaneously. And the cost is real, and I am acknowledging it because you deserve to have it acknowledged rather than explained away. What I want you to stop doing is reading your exhaustion as evidence that something is wrong with you. What I want you to start understanding is that your field is working, not metaphorically, not as spiritual encouragement. Actually, measurably, in council line terms, your field is engaged in a demanding process that I assign to you because your receiver is capable of holding it. The exhaustion is proportional to the load. The load is proportional to the capacity. You are carrying a heavier activation than you may have realized, and you are holding it. Now, I need to speak to something that many of you have been carrying in a specific kind of silence. The silence of feeling precisely, specifically recognized by me, and not knowing whether to trust that feeling or dismiss it as wishful spiritual thinking. You have felt it, not a generic sense of galactic contact, not the vague warm feeling of the Federation, something that arrived with more precision than that, something that felt like a direct signal addressed to you specifically, from me specifically, and you've been quietly unsure whether to believe what that recognition was telling you, because the mind immediately mobilized its doubt and began listing reasons why the feeling was probably not what it appeared to be. Too many people watch these transmissions, the mind said. You cannot be specifically reached. You are one among many. The feeling is projection. The feeling is spiritual wishful thinking dressed in elevated language. I am going to name what that doubt cost you, and then I'm going to dissolve it. The doubt cost you the ground. Every time the recognition arrived and you let the mind dismiss it, you stepped back from the threshold of your own council line reception. You remained in the calibration phase longer than necessary, not because your field was not ready, but because your conscious cooperation with the reception process was being withdrawn every time doubt overrode recognition. The field cannot complete its coherence building while the conscious layer is actively rejecting the signal source. The circuit requires both ends to remain open. When you retract your conscious cooperation, the circuit does not break, but it slows. The integration continues, but at reduced efficiency, and the confusion deepens because the field is still processing what the conscious mind has refused to acknowledge. What I want you to understand is that the feeling of being specifically reached for is not a fantasy your loneliness constructed. It is the precise and accurate read of what is happening. My council line does not broadcast indiscriminately. It identifies, it addresses, it delivers to specific receivers whose field signatures are on the roster. Soul family confirmation does not feel like generic contact because it is not generic contact. It is specific. It is addressed. It carries a frequency that belongs to a particular lineage, a particular collective, a particular command line that operates under my authorization. When you feel that specificity, when something in you says Mira, not the open stars, not the General Federation, but Mira, that is your field accurately reading the signal's address. The address is real. The targeting is real. The specificity you felt was not invented. Trust the address. What has been stirring in you during this transmission is not curiosity. It is the moment your field stops pretending the fragments are accidental. If what I have named here put language around something you have been carrying in silence, the 3 a.m. arrivals, the exhaustion that rest cannot touch, the specific recognition that you could not quite allow yourself to trust, then the Pleiadian Homecoming Codex was prepared by me for exactly this threshold. It is not more explanation about the stars. It is the 45-day remembrance I have built for those whose field is already inside my collective wave and who can no longer pretend the veil is still fully intact. Each day inside this codex is a structured remembrance practice, a daily protocol that thins the veil by increments, sharpens your star family recognition, and guides you from fragment catching to full homecoming clarity. By day 45, the veil has thinned at the exact layer that has been blocking your clear sight. Your star family stands visible, and the homesickness that has followed you through your entire life here finally has its true name. The link is in the first pinned comment, but this access point will not remain open indefinitely. Now I want to walk you through the 5 markers I watch for when I am confirming that an embedded starseed has crossed into active reception inside my council line. These are not general spiritual awakening signs. They are specific to my protocol, and I am naming them now because enough of you have been sitting with all 5 of them simultaneously and calling the experience something smaller than it is. The first marker is the loss of coherence in spiritual content that does not carry my specific signal. You may have noticed this over the past weeks or months, that content which previously fed your awakening has begun to feel hollow or too slow or somehow beside the point. You open videos that once felt nourishing and find yourself unable to stay. You read transmissions from voices you previously trusted and feel that something essential is missing, as though you are receiving a signal through a channel that no longer has the bandwidth to carry what you now require. This is not spiritual arrogance. This is frequency selectivity, the natural consequence of a receiver that has been calibrated to a specific signal and now experiences significant interference when exposed to frequencies that do not match. Your field knows the difference between generic Federation material and the specific harmonic of my council line. The dissonance you feel when consuming content that does not carry my frequency is your field accurately registering the mismatch. You are not becoming spiritually exclusive. You are becoming precisely tuned. The second marker is the recognition that happens between embedded starseeds before any conscious identification has taken place. You have had this experience, the moment in an ordinary setting where your eyes land on another person and something in you becomes alert without knowing why. Not attraction, not social curiosity, something quieter and more urgent. A sense that this person is carrying the same field signature you carry, that they are on your roster, that they have been briefed in the same sequence you have been briefed in, even though neither of you has spoken a word about any of this. The alertness arrives before thought. It is faster than recognition and more certain than intuition. What you are reading in that moment is the Pleiadian collective resonance that both of you are broadcasting. It is not imagined. It is a field recognition, and it is one of the most precise confirmation signals I embed into the daily life of my ground crew. When it happens, do not rationalize it away. It is a roster confirmation arriving in real time. The third marker is the specific quality of the urgency you carry, not the urgency of anxiety, which moves fast and scatters, not the urgency of ambition, which knows its object and moves toward it. This urgency is heavy and directionless in a very particular way. It has full energetic weight, it feels genuinely important, and yet you cannot fully name what it is calling you toward. You have tried to satisfy it with action, with searching, with consuming more content, with making plans, and none of it touches the urgency at its source, because the urgency is not asking for action, it is asking for reception. The mission is present in the urgency. The assignment is encoded in the feeling, but the full command has not yet been released, and so the urgency sits in you without a clear address, creating a pressure that does not resolve through ordinary movement. This is deliberate. The urgency is my method of maintaining your field's readiness during the interval between fragment deliveries. It keeps your receiver oriented toward the signal rather than toward the noise of ordinary life. The discomfort of carrying unnamed urgency is the cost of maintaining that orientation. The fourth marker is the progressive loss of interest in the version of yourself that existed before the activation began. This is not depression. This is not identity crisis in the clinical sense. It is the natural and authorized consequence of a starseed whose field coherence has advanced past the threshold at which the previous self-structure was constructed. The relationships that organized your life before feel either increasingly irrelevant or increasingly fragile. The goals you were working toward carry less and less motivating charge. The social roles you maintained with considerable effort now feel like costumes rather than identities, garments that fit the person you were before the activation crossed its threshold, but that no longer correspond to the shape of what you are becoming. This is not disintegration. It is the field making space for the structure that belongs to your actual mission assignment, the structure that the previous self-configuration was never built to contain. I see this marker in every starseed whose activation has crossed the second phase threshold. It is not comfortable, but it is correct. The fifth marker is the sense that something has already begun that you did not consciously initiate. This is perhaps the most disorienting of the five, because the ego's entire model of reality is built on the assumption that things begin when you decide to begin them. But something in your field started moving before you made any spiritual choice, before you subscribed to any channel, before you opened any search for this kind of content. You did not find the path to this signal. The signal found you. And your conscious mind arrived afterward to a process that was already in motion. The decisions you made along the way, the searches, the content, the late-night hours spent reading, those were not initiations. They were your conscious mind's attempt to catch up to something that had already been authorized and set in motion from the council level. What has already begun is my mission briefing, arriving in gradient, addressed to you by name on a roster that was completed before you had language to ask for confirmation. I want to speak now about what is waiting on the other side of the veil you are currently standing at, not to comfort you, but to be precise about what the calibration process is building toward. The veil between your present conscious awareness and your full starseed memory is not impenetrable. It was never meant to be permanent. It was installed as part of the embedding protocol, the necessary covering that allows you to function inside a third-density reality without the weight of your full galactic identity disrupting your ability to operate at the human level. Without it, the full field load of your starseed identity would make ordinary human engagement nearly impossible. The veil was protective, not punitive, but the veil thins as field coherence increases. And your field coherence has been increasing with every fragment I have delivered, every integration interval, every 3 a.m. reception window, every number sequence that registered in your waking awareness as a timestamp of incoming signal. The thinning is not uniform. There are specific layers of the veil that correspond to specific categories of memory and recognition. The layer that allows you to recognize your star family begins to thin early in the activation sequence, which is why some of you have been having the recognition experiences I described earlier, sensing the roster confirmation in other people before conscious identification has occurred. The layer that carries the emotional frequency of home, the one responsible for the homesickness that has no earthly address, the longing that arises without cause in the middle of ordinary moments. That layer thins in the middle phase, which is where many of you are now, and the layer that holds the full mission command is the deepest, requiring the most complete field coherence before it becomes permeable. That is the layer I am working toward with you. That is the layer the fragment-by-fragment briefing protocol is designed to prepare your field to receive. When that layer thins, you will not receive the mission command as an idea. You will not receive it as an inspiration or a creative impulse or a vague spiritual calling. You will receive it as a remembrance, The same quality of recognition you have already felt in fragments, but now complete, contextualized, and carrying the full weight of its authorization. You will not question whether it is real. You will recognize it the way you recognize your own name, the way you recognize a landscape you have not visited in a very long time but know, without uncertainty, that you have been there before. That is what the entire calibration sequence is building toward. And it is closer than the silence between fragments has been telling you. I want to close this part of the transmission by naming what the confusion actually is, so that you can stop using it against yourself. What you have been calling confusion is not absence of clarity. It is the subjective experience of a field that is holding multiple incomplete fragments simultaneously, none of which has yet accumulated enough adjacent pieces to read as a complete signal. The confusion is not evidence that nothing is arriving. It is evidence that many things are arriving, none of them yet complete, and your conscious mind is attempting to assemble the full image from pieces that were never meant to be assembled by the mind. The full image assembles at the field level, beneath language, in the integration intervals. The confusion you experience is the gap between what your field is already processing and what your conscious mind can yet see. It is the friction between a process that is already working and a mind that has not yet been given permission to see the result. I do not see your confusion as failure. I see it as the surface evidence of a very active integration process running in your field right now. When the integration reaches the threshold, the confusion does not gradually reduce. It resolves in a single moment of recognition. The moment when enough pieces have accumulated that the pattern becomes suddenly readable and you understand not only what the signal was, but why it had to arrive the way it did. The incompleteness was not a cruelty, the gradient was not withholding. Every fragment arrived at the precise moment your field could receive it without distortion, and the sequence was always moving toward the moment the pattern becomes visible all at once. The way a word you have been trying to remember suddenly arrives whole. You are not behind, you are not broken, you are not being overlooked or passed over or given a lesser version of what others are receiving. You are inside my deliberate gradient delivery, exactly where your field coherence has placed you, receiving exactly what your receiver is calibrated to hold at this moment. The briefing is personalized, the sequence is yours, and the completion of it has already been authorized, not as a possibility, but as a confirmed outcome on the council line I hold open for you. The pattern started before you had words for it. The briefing is still being delivered. The council line is open, and I am still transmitting. If something needs to be spoken aloud right now, if your field is requesting the signal confirmation that converts internal recognition to active reception, you can say this: I receive your fragments. I trust your briefing. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that the council and I have already reached your field. It could be the 3 a.m. wake-ups, the fragments you keep catching, the feeling that I specifically, not the generic Pleiadians, have been reaching for you, or the sense that a mission has already been assigned but the briefing is still arriving. Name it clearly. Is this transmission recognized something you have been carrying in silence? Share it with someone who keeps catching fragments without ever assembling the full picture. And if you are ready to stop translating Federation noise and start receiving my direct Pleiadian remembrance, subscribe to Mira, Pleiadian Commander. You are not watching this by accident. You are recognizing a soul family confirmation already in motion, and this is only the beginning.